You know, we here at the World's Worst Humans don't like to brag, but when we do, it's because we have a sign from Timu. It's because we have a sign that lights up. That's why we have the stalkers. Yeah. You know why we get the death threats? It's because we have a real sign that lights up. That's how people know we're worthy. People are talking. No big deal. I wouldn't worry about it. Hello, I'm Dex Carrington, and welcome to World's Worst Humans. Today we're talking about everyone's favorite psychopath, Turkmenbashi.
We chatted on the dark and grim, laughed through tales of twisted whims.
Sapara Murat Ateyevich Niazov. His real name was Sapar Murat Ateyevich Niazov. I can't memorize that. We're just going to say Turkmenbashi was born on February 19th, 1940. He wasn't originally called Turkmenbashi. He was called something else before he became Turkmenbashi. Turkmenbashi was orphanaged at an early age, and he grew up in a communist orphanage. Now, if you're going to end up in an orphanage, you want a communist one. I mean, that's just a given. And then later on, he went to Leningrad Polytechnic University. Again, yeah, that was right. Oh my God, Polytechnic Institute with a diploma in electrical engineering, communist engineering, because that's a different thing. It's a lot more equal. So he learned, how to be a communist engineer, which is why they let him into the Communist Party in the 1960s. So Mikhail Gorbachev makes him the leader of Turkmenistan under the Soviet regime. He's a loyal communist. Everything's going really, really well. 1990 rolls along. Communism falls. So what does he do? He steps up and, like a real man, holds an election of who's going to be the leader of Turkmenistan and makes it illegal for anyone else to run. And so he declares himself the leader of Turkmenistan. Now, again, what really matters in life? What actually happens? Reality? I think not. It's what you declare. That's what matters. So if a woman comes up to me and she says, "Hey, you're not attractive," I go, "Sorry, already declared it." See? So then he says he's going to be the leader for the next 10 years. And then he goes, "Wait a minute, that was stupid." And then makes himself president for life, right? So again, it's never what you are, it's what you think you are. And what can you convince others you are by using force. So before we go any further with the story of Turkmenbashi, let's talk about what he did that was normal or like good for the country. Oil production, manufacturing, textile production. Everyone got human rights, at least publicly. And like they, took away the death penalty, at least publicly. No more child labor. And everyone got free salt, free rations, free water, free gas, free utilities. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about anything. We're totally good here. We're also going to be neutral in war. He said, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. What a great time." He's like, "Yes, it's going to be such a great time. Don't worry about the time. It's going to be so great." Because if you want to be an insane psychopath, you have to make people feel good and believe good things are going to happen, right? And that's an amazing lesson for life. Like, before you terrorize someone, calm them down. It's just common sense. Turkmenbashi is the name he gave himself when he took over power, and Turkmenbashi means leader of Turkmen. So Turkmenistan has a lot of natural gas. Makes it a very rich country, which means he's free to do a lot of things to this country. First thing he does is build statues of himself all over the entire country. Absolutely everywhere. Him as a child, him with an apple, him with a bow and arrow, him with a book. His mom, his uncle looking at him, just all kinds of stuff like that. And he would just pulverize kindergartens. He would tear down mountains, and he would just destroy people's lives, homes, and crops to put up these statues, which again is a perfectly sane thing to do. And I think we should all strive to have more statues of ourselves in our local community. And then other than that, he started getting into bed with the U.S. on a trade deal, but then he demanded 1/3 of that money from that deal be put into his personal account, and the U.S. didn't like that. So because he was dealing with the United States, other countries like Afghanistan and Russia and stuff like that, they were very, dissatisfied with what was happening, and so they just excommunicated Turkmenistan. So what he did was he just tore down 22,000 houses of his own people and then built 20 luxury hotels. So at the end of the day, who's laughing now? When you build a house, you build the foundation first. Only a solid foundation is something you can build a house on. So the same kind of attitude is what Turkmenbashi had when setting up this country. So He named all the capitals after himself, then the schools, then the streets, then the institutions, the months of the year, the days of the week, and then normal everyday words like bread or box after himself. He then changed the alphabet, turned it into the Turkmenbashi alphabet. He then built his own sort of Disneyland park, which was called Turkmenbashi Land of Fairy Tales. Turkmenbashi is an extraordinary singer-songwriter. Of course, he rewrites the national anthem, makes it all about himself, how he's so great, how other people can aspire towards that greatness, which obviously the people love. I mean, everyone's dying for more Turkmenbashi. Who wouldn't be at the time, or even today? I mean, I know on a daily basis, I wake up and think, I can't get enough Turkmenbashi. And I think we all have that in common. So then he writes a book, which is called The Book of the Soul, and it's about him and how great he is, and how he sees the world, his life story, and how others can work really, really hard and maybe one day be like him. Basically a book that puts the Bible to shame. And so, obviously, for everyone's best interests, it becomes mandatory reading for absolutely everyone, and every family has to own one. And then to graduate from school, you have to be able to quote the entire book. And students will spend one entire day every week reading from the book. And even a driving test, to get a driver's license, you need to quote the entire book. That's more important than actually knowing how to drive a car, which is kind of a given. But then it gets to the final level where he's like, you know what? These people deserve to have this book in their lives in an even harder way. So you have to read the book at least once to go to heaven. And then later on, he changes it. No, you actually have to have read the book 3 times to go to heaven. And then someone goes, how do you actually know that? And he goes, it's okay, I spoke to God and I told him, unless they've read it 3 times, don't let them in. So Turkmenbashi is giving orders to God. No big deal. And here's the thing. In a normal circumstance, if someone acts like this, you would say, man, they're so narcissistic. But that's just not the case here, because he just was that great. And that's the big difference with Turkmenbashi, which is why we all think about him on a daily basis, because he just was that great. And he was actually pretty humble, because when he gave himself the literature prize for writing that book, he actually wrote in the book just to be nice to God, like, I'm a prophet of God. And that kind of generosity you don't really see with truly great people, right? And if he really was a narcissist, he would never write that. That's a given. So then Turkmenbashi, he continued his reign of greatness, and he shut down the entire health sector and fired 15,000 people from the health care services of the country, because who needs health care services when you have the book? You can just read the book and not get sick. Don't be an idiot. He also took away the Hippocratic Oath and replaced it with the presidential oath. So in order to do surgery well, with ethical principles involved, you worship Turkmenbashi. Everyone knows that. He also shut down every single library, because at the end of the day, why do you need the other books if you have Turkmenbashi's book? It's not rocket science. And so he then made a very bold move, which everyone respected, and that is he cut everyone's pensions. And not only that, but you had to pay back your pension for the last 2 years, because he wanted to build a statue of himself that was on a foundation that kept rotating, so it was always facing the sun at any given time. Which, you got to respect that. But then people said, wait a minute, has this gone too far? And he said, not even close, because he wanted to build an ice palace in one of the hottest deserts in Central Asia and put a bunch of penguins in it, like a real man. Turkmenbashi then proceeded to solve the climate problems in his own country by planting endless amounts of pine trees in the desert. They all died. And then it's easy to say, oh, well, that was a failure. Really? Here's my question. How many pine trees have you planted in the desert recently? Thought so. Turkmenbashi was no stranger to danger. So at one point, the US got involved and they said, listen, you need more democracy and more human rights in this country. So he said, whoa, 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 calm down, problem solved. He got on a podium and he said, listen, we're going to have more democracy and more human rights. The White House said, this is great. And they invited him to the White House. And then he said, by the way, I was joking the whole time. There's going to be less democracy and less human rights. Power moves much? Turkmenbashi was very concerned about health. So he built something equivalent to the Great Wall of China, but it was 8 kilometers long. And everyone in Turkmenistan had to walk there on the weekends. But people who worked in parliament, they had to run the 8 kilometers on this wall in 90 minutes, while Turkmenbashi took a helicopter up, and then he laughed at them like the entire time they were running, and then if they didn't make it, he kicked them on live TV. Now, if that doesn't motivate you to do better next time, I don't know what will. One day of the year, normal citizens could walk into Parliament, and they were allowed to give compliments to Turkmenbashi. That's a great guy. Okay, I mean, it's not, who can say that he wasn't a great guy? And then also he had a team of lawyers at any given time around him, just in case he came up with a law then and there, and it could immediately get put into the constitution of the country, right? Because he's a doer, okay? This guy doesn't sit around waiting for things to happen. He's always taking action. There was a guy who worked as a bodyguard for Turkmenbashi in the late 90s, and he said Turkmenbashi loved drugs, and all the bodyguards had to wear helmets because Turkmenbashi would get all high, and then he would shoot at all the bodyguards all the time. So then you have to ask yourself, if you wake up at rehab and you're watching this at rehab and going like, oh no, my life has become unmanageable because of drugs and alcohol. Maybe you didn't have enough bodyguards to shoot at. Okay, just throwing it out there. Don't be too hard on yourself, but at the same time, face facts. So in conclusion, Turkmenbashi, he ruled for over 20 years, and he died of heart failure in 2006. Obviously, there's a bunch of people who tried to assassinate him at any given time. He had political opponents. He had them put in prison. Anyone he didn't like, he put them in prison. And he just did whatever he wanted to, and he built huge buildings and, tore down houses and demolished schools and, killed, but, actually, he didn't kill that many people. But torture was his thing. And that's the lesson here, You get a lot farther in life when you know what you're good at and what you're not. Okay? And if this guy had thought, hey, I'm great at killing, wouldn't have gone as well as it did. But he said, no, I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm a torture guy. Okay? So what he would do is he would tie people up, and then he would kill their family in front of them. He was good at what he did. Okay? And that's because he was honest with himself. So the spiritual principle of the day in this episode is self-acceptance. So to conclude this episode, which is a motivational episode, here are the things that Turkmenbashi banned during his reign. Number one, the internet, obviously. If you have his book, you don't need the internet. Miming at concerts, obviously. Who do you think you are? The artist? Next, dogs from the capital. Well, I think we all know what that means. Smoking was banned after Turkmenbashi himself quit in 1997, which makes sense. It is totally unacceptable for you to think you can keep smoking when he isn't. I mean, listen, he's doing drugs and shooting his bodyguards, and you think you can smoke? Think again. Next, opera, ballet, and circus. Because they're stupid, it says right here. He knows. Long hair and beards, which means I would be assassinated, which I respect. In 2004, news anchors were no longer allowed to wear makeup on TV. Why? Turkmenbashi thought he couldn't tell the difference between men and women, which made the president uncomfortable. Common problem. Okay, common problem. He's the only one who dares admit it. That's the only difference. I have that problem all the time. I'm walking on the street. Is that a man? Is it a woman? I don't know. Is that a non-binary tomato? I don't know anything. It makes me uncomfortable too. Golden teeth were also banned for obvious reasons. If I have to explain that to you, I just feel stupid. So would you. Recorded music. Obviously, you don't record music. That's just a given. Free press. Hey, okay? You can have freedom a lot of places, but not the press, okay? You have to get up pretty early in the morning to convince me of that. Car stereos. Obviously. And then finally, he fired all traffic police for corruption, even though there was none proven. And that's the real take-home point. If you sense someone is about to do something to you, you take revenge now, before it happens.
We chatted on the dark and grim, laughed through tales of twisted whim.